Okay, listen. This is a new Colossal minion. This is his face, where he devours enemies. And then, after he's eaten them, this spits them back out. But it's not a face. It doesn't have eyeballs. It's his butt. It's his butt. That's right. This is Gigafin. I don't know if I can ever play this card looking at that. But otherwise, a pretty cool minion. He's a new 8-mana Colossal minion for Warlock. Of course, a Murloc. A 7/4, and he's Mutanus's bigger brother. Mutanus, maybe is how you say it. Mutanus, and Gigafin. Anyway, he's got a battle cry that reads, devour all enemy minions, and Death Rattle, spit them back out. So he's also going to summon his Maw, as all Colossal minions do. Just to recap, anytime Gigafin is summoned, the Maw, the Colossal appendage, comes with him, whether that's played from hand or not. And in this case, of course, there's an interaction here because the Maw has Taunt, and Death Rattle permanently destroy all minions inside Gigafin. So you play Gigafin, he eats a bunch of minions, basically a one-directional board clear. Of course, that's insane, while also developing a bunch of stats on board, a 7/4 and a 4/7. This is like Stalag and Fugen stats paired together. And for any deck that doesn't have, say, a direct damage spell that can snipe the Gigafin, it might just be a fantastic board swing that's developing an absurd amount of stats, like 11 damage threat on board as well. So there will be scenarios where you're about to stabilize against, say, like a Paladin, a board-based deck, you slam Gigafin, and that wins you the game. That's it. They can't recover. They have no way to kill the Gigafin. They're not going to get their board back. You're going to stabilize on the back of these two giant minions, and that's just going to be how it goes. Now, of course, there can also be some ways to like bounce, Gigafin back into hand, and then that was going to remove the minions. You can replay them. We've had stuff like Youthful Brewmaster in the past. I think that's more of the kind of sneaky, less likely way to utilize this card. Maybe Rogue can do that when randomly generating a Gigafin with some Shadow Steps and stuff. But for Warlock itself, I don't think that's as likely. I really do think this is more about that just all in. We're going to make the big play, and sometimes it's going to work. And even if it doesn't work perfectly, it's still going to slow down your opponent. It's kind of like a freeze in effect because those minions aren't going to get to attack for a turn. So even in the fail states, I actually think Gigafin's still a pretty effective turn. Just playing stuff, disrupting your opponent, making them spend mana to figure it all out, and stalling their board for a turn. And then occasionally it's just going to be that game winner that wipes their board. So almost in either case, Gigafin seems cool. Now, it is an 8-mana card, but Warlock is able to play towards higher mana costs quite successfully, extend games with all their different healing and removal options. So I don't think that's necessarily a huge challenge for Warlock. And we've seen Twisting Nether succeed in past metas, and Warlock still today plays expensive stuff. So I could easily envision this popping into a handful of different slower Warlock decks as a really cool removal tool with all of these just various upsides. So next up here is a new MAGE legendary, and as you can see, this is not the English version yet, but I have a translation that should be very close to correct as far as final wording is concerned, but the effects are correct here. So we don't know the name of this guy just yet. Big Earthquake mech guy. He's an 8-mana 5/7 Colossal legendary for Mage. He's Colossal +2. So he's going to summon 2 of the minions you see over there on your right, which are 2/3 mechs with Rush. And then also he has an effect, deal 1 damage to all enemies, that's both minions and face, after a friendly mech attacks. So you're summoning 2 guys with Rush. That means you can proc that twice immediately, which means you're going to be able to deal 2 damage to the enemy board and 2 damage face, and an additional, of course, 2 damage each with these Rush minions. So could be a pretty decent board clear in essence, allowing you to hit maybe like 1 big target and a bunch of small stuff, a couple medium-sized things. There are various board states that would line up, I think, rather well against this effect. And if you happen to have any other mechs on board already or some other Rush mechs, since, of course, this is a text effect, it's not a battle cry or anything like that, it keeps going off. So If you have a big board of mechs, you can actually kind of use this as a burst damage enabler, because if they had like 5 attacks, this could deal 5 extra immediate damage or something just with mechs on board. So actually a lot of reactivity baked into this, pretty big stat dump as well. Even at 8 mana, just getting 3 minions with some that can trade right away is good. And then long-term upside or finisher upside as well, if this big mech Colossal guy sticks around as well. And we already saw some mech mage stuff teased, where you can add some random mechs to your hand. So you can see the makings here of an actual mech mage, which we haven't seen since really goblins versus gnomes. So this is exciting. I think this card actually does a lot. It gives you face damage, which is important, reactivity, which is important. 8 mana is definitely expensive for cards like this, and you know, I still think spell-based mages will outclass this in the short term, but that doesn't rule this out eventually, right? Like if you get the critical mass of mechs that are necessary, a slightly different meta where minion combat's really relevant, cards like this can definitely shine. So next up here is Sir Finley Sea Guide, and this card has a bit of a story because I was supposed to reveal this card like a week or two ago or whatever. Blizzard sent me this card to reveal, and then I was on stream yesterday and people go, Regis, did you see Sir Finley Sea Guide? And I was like, did I leak my card? Oh god, did I accidentally put it in a video? Like what happened? Why do they know about Sir Finley? Turns out like the official Korean stream or something leaked a version of Sir Finley. So Blizzard was like, oh hey, let's just send you some new cards for your reveal. And I posted Sir Finley over on Twitter to get the official translation, and here we are. Sir Finley is out a little early, and he's a 1-mana 1/3 Murloc with Battlecry. Swap your hand with the bottom of your deck. So if you got a crappy hand you don't like, play Sir Finley, trade it out for some cards on the bottom of your deck. Now, the most obvious and notable synergy for this is all of the new Sunken cards that are putting cool stuff on the bottom of your deck, like Phelan putting a few Colossal minions on the bottom of your deck. You can play Sir Finley and draw some really high value stuff that you've put specifically there on the bottom of your deck. And if there are any decks that are utilizing that strategy with Dredge or Sunken stuff, Sir Finley seems like he'd be an obvious fit there, because he's a great way to basically dredge up a bunch of stuff as opposed to just a single card with the keyword dredge. So he could be a very powerful play in those kinds of decks. Now, outside of that, I still think Finley has a little bit of utility. He's basically a reroll on your mulligan, or even like a new mulligan in the mid game if you just kind of get a hand that's not right for the scenario or situation, or you just want to see some different stuff. You can plop Sir Finley down and trade out your cards for some different ones, and maybe you'll find a combo piece or just something great. Now, based on the wording here with the swap, it does not look like this does a plot twist style effect where it's drawing the cards. It looks like it might be more like Secret Passage, where the cards don't count as actually being drawn. So that changes for things like a Demon Hunter quest. This is probably not going to activate like a Demon Hunter quest cycle all on its own. So that does limit some of the like crazy draw synergy potential here for Sir Finley, but it is still that sort of Secret Passage effect. Now, it is distinct from Secret Passage, to be clear, because Secret Passage is extra cards. Like basically, when you play that Secret Passage, you're seeing new stuff, and you can play that new stuff right away, but you're getting your old cards back after the Secret Passage, right? So you're getting a total net gain of resources in hand if you're playing those cards from Secret Passage. So Finley, you're not getting the hand back immediately, right? So it's the same number of resources as opposed to additional resources. So I don't think this is like a neutral Secret Passage that every deck just runs. It's more about choice as opposed to resource. Much like Dredge is actually more about choice than it is about resources. And sometimes slightly better choices aren't really as good as just extra stuff or extra tempo. So in some ways that could limit Sir Finley's utility. Not all decks will necessarily value that extra choice. You're going to have a pretty distinct difference in card quality within your deck in order to value that choice enough. So things like combo pieces that are very important to find could be a driver for something like Sir Finley. Of course, combo decks are weird because you might have other combo pieces already in hand. So there's challenges kind of across the board. So where does that leave Sir Finley? I think he just does a big enough thing, and his effect is unique enough that there will be decks that play this guy and they will care about this effect. But I do not think he'll be like a universal card that every deck plays. I think he doesn't quite do enough for that, essentially. All right, so next up here is the Kotori Lightblade, a new Paladin legendary minion. Dude looks like he's got a cool holy lightsaber. Sign me up for that. 2 mana, 2/3. It reads, after you cast a holy spell on this, cast it again on another friendly minion. So we're getting some more holy spell synergies here for Paladin, and this one's all about duplicating your holy spells. So if you have a nice big buff spell, you can play it on Kotari and then buff another minion that's on board. Maybe putting some stats on a nice Divine Shield minion or something that's already ready to attack, so you can get those stats into play immediately, while also getting kind of the bonus here on Kotori. Also, any other upside on those spells, think about old cards like Hand of a Doll. It could basically allow you to draw extra cards. Libram of Hopes could allow you to summon an extra 8/8 Divine Shield with Taunt. Now, those are both rotating examples, but of course, we could have new cards come in with those sorts of effects. Also, any kind of spammy stuff like Libram of Wisdom of old, any repeatable effects could really start to extract extra value out of Kotori. I know I'm using old examples, but those are the most relevant ones. Those are the kinds of cards Kotori is going to need moving forward. If you look at the holy spells right now, they're not great. I think stuff like Hold the Bridge is probably the best role moving forward in the standard format. So I do think he'll need new holy spells to make this really exciting. So all of that said, like, clearly there's some upside here, but I'm a little bit worried about how this card's going to actually extract that upside, because I think you need some pretty specific scenarios for Kotori to be good. I think this card is best when you have a fair bit of mana to spend, because obviously you want to play a lot of stuff or significant stuff in order to get some extra upside out of duplicating it. In other words, just playing this with like one spell might not be really enough to make it worth running in your deck. So, you know, I'm thinking maybe 5, 6, even like 8 mana turns are where Kotori is going to shine the most. I also think it's important that you maintain some kind of reactivity. So that might need rush minions, maybe a minion that's already on board would be the best case scenario. So I think Kotori is going to be good when you're already ahead, because if you have to play another minion alongside him, that's eating into your total available mana to utilize for the spells that are getting duplicated. So I think you've got a card that shines in the mid game or later, and it has a couple layers of conditionality. You have to have a holy spell in hand. You have to have another minion ready to go. Those are both 2 checks on this card being good that make me nervous. It's not very self-sufficient. You have to have kind of a lot of things lining up. And I think it's probably a card that makes most sense in Paladin with buffs. We've seen a lot of buff stuff like this work well in Paladin. And you don't always want to keep a couple things in hand waiting for that in a more tempo-driven deck. You kind of want to play stuff out. You want things to be independent and self-sufficient. So those make me nervous for Kotori. I almost think you need a slower deck that's trying to get some kind of extra value or something out of this in the late game. Almost think of it like a like Sethic Veilweaver or something, where you're drawing extra cards or generating extra resources in hand, as opposed to playing for purely stats on board. I think if you're looking at this as a stats on board card, it has a lot of challenges in those more tempo environments. It's when you have extra mana and extra time that this probably makes more sense, or even extra resources in hand. So I don't know what cards are going to come in to fill that gap, but I don't think this is as obvious a fit as some people are expecting. I think he's going to be kind of awkward in the best ways to play Paladin these days. And I think he only has limited upside, even if we envision some best case scenarios. There's still a lot that has to work for this card to succeed. Giga Finn is a 4-star card. This mech dude whose name I don't know is a 4-star card. Sir Finley Sea Guide is a 3-star card. Kotori Lightblade is a 2-star card. And there you go, folks. That wraps it up for this review. Some crazy legendary reveals already, like so many legendaries in this one. So share your thoughts on these cards down in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, game on.